Good evening, everyone. The circuit of Paul Ricard was built in the late 1960s and renowned for its safety and innovation. The track has gone on to be one of the most popular circuits in all of Europe for a host of different racing categories. From the GT World Challenge through to ELMS, also through to TCR Europe. There are so many different categories of racing car that has participated around here over the years that the list of categories are far too long for me to even go through in a full 1 hour race of GT3s that we've got coming up in just a moment. And tonight the drivers are going to be navigating around a spectacular circuit in Le Castellet. They have 13 corners to tackle for tonight for the third round of the championship here with ACC Race Nation in the GT3 Challenge Series. I'm Jack Millington, your commentator, as always, for this championship. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be back again around the circuit that within this championship has caused a lot of drama. We think back to last season, in season 11, where we had multiple different race leaders, including Dennis Penders, but in the end, Danny Zoutenbayer was able to sneak through and historically take a first double podium for brothers in the championship. Both of the Zoutenbayers are in this evening as we watch Ben Spiro, the Hungarian, fly down the 1.2 kilometre Mistral Straight in his Ferrari 296. But let's have a look at qualifying. We are already 12 minutes into the session. We've got Ballas Zorden on provisional pole currently. It's Stuart Packham in second position. Hartel Toby in the Audi R8 is third. Jeffrey Van Buren back in his Ferrari after the struggles he had in the opening 2 rounds of the McLaren. He is fourth in the 187. Dan Hatton, last week's race winner at Brands Hatch, of course, for the first time in the championship. He's inside the top 5 currently. Steve Hall, so far the unluckiest man this season due to the amount of incidents he's been caught up in through no fault of his own. He's currently in 7th because we've had a little change as Davy Zoutenbayer is running in 5th position at the moment. Howard Dunn is in 8th with Michael van der Waal in 9th. Mark Laszlo rounds out the top 10. And of course the other Zoutenbayer of Danny in the pits. Loads of other drivers have set a bunch of lap times. The only one we haven't yet seen is Rover Rakatamanga in the number 14 Lamborghini. We'll wait to see how he gets on this evening, the Frenchman. At his home track, of course, that's why I'm focusing on him. He'll be trying to pull a challenge in from, at the moment, the back of the grid. We will have to have a double check as to whether he has any penalties from last week's event at Branch. But what a track this is, you know. It is a really spectacular circuit. It's something that has been always renowned for its safety, with its unique systems that it utilises, with the extra grippy surfaces. You can see the blue and red lines as we go past the effectively chicane of the GP circuit. And you can see that there, as that's a little overtake going on between Liam Watkinson and Howard Dunn fighting over the same piece of tarmac. They did both come out of the pits, I believe, at the same time. The fastest lap around this circuit is from Christoph Lenz. He did that in a Lamborghini Huracan back in 2019, and that was a 1:59.319. However, I must admit that that is on the full GP loop, so our drivers, they will not be worried about reaching that time because they don't have to worry about the chicane. Ballas Zorden coming towards the start-finish line, and he looks to have just improved there, but he's currently on pole position. Ballas is having a good start to the season so far. The opening 2 rounds, he's 7th in the drivers' standings. He was 4th at race 1. He was unlucky last week at Brands. I felt like he was on for another top 5, top 6 position, but sadly events transpired, went away from him. He's also changed his livery this week slightly. Rather than the white and gold, he's now got more of a, let's call that a mercurial blue. on that car. And Danny Zoutenbayer has also changed delivery. So a couple of colour scheme changes in the grid this evening. Let's see if we can get on board with a driver. Just looking to see who is relatively well positioned. Well, perfect timing really. We've got Mr. Laszlo, who we can ride on board with. Mark, 19th last week, he retired in the first round, so let's ride on board with him then. He's going to come around the final corner, and really critical to starting this lap well is turn 13. Got to get a good exit out of there. Laszlo now building up the gears in the McLaren as he goes across the line. He's done a 55.7. Approaching turn 1 and 2, a little bit off camber, have to be careful with the brakes going into this corner. Third gear down to second, a little bit cautious from the number 8 driver. Skips over the curb and a little hesitation on the throttle, but no harm done. He is improving on his lap time thus far. He's on the approach to what is effectively turns 3 and 4. These corners carry on for quite a period of time. A long left-hander then feeds into the difficult turn number 5. Again, the line is really critical through here to set yourself up for turn 6. As you can see, a little twitch of oversteer, and again the rear end snapping on Laszlo's McLaren machine. But he fires out of turn 7, but that little oversteer moment will have cost him a little bit of time. He is currently bang on par with the fastest lap he's done so far, which is a 54.6. But this straight goes on for such a long time. Your exit is so critical. Up to 176 miles an hour. Into the right-hander at signs. Here we go. How committed is he? Down to 5th gear. Nice throttle application. He's got to run a little bit wide, but he'll get away with that. Into the double right-hander then at turn number 9. It's effectively one corner, but it is 2 bites of apex to go through. A little bit wide on the latter part, but no harm done. A very tighter line and then wide line through turn 10. I think he got his approach a little bit wrong there, and he's just lost the 10th, as you can see in the top left corner. Flat through turn 11, but it's all about queuing up turns 12 and 13. Long progressive corners, all about getting the line tidy. And then into the final corner, first gear for most people around here, and that's a better line from Laszlo. You could see the improvement there. He is going to go a little bit faster on this qualifying lap, and he does a 54.6, and he's on the 3rd row of the grid. That's a really strong effort from Mark. Top effort that in the 720S. Let's hope he can get himself a good result this evening. He's been a little bit unfortunate in the opening 2 races. We'll see how he gets on. Still, though, it is Ballas Zorden at the top of the timesheets, and we've got a bit of a glitch going on here with our timing tower. See if I can get this to update and change. Sometimes it does this, sometimes it doesn't want to know, and it looks like right now it doesn't want to know. So we'll have to make do with what we have available to us. So we can see the timing tower, but we can't flick through the drivers in the way that I'd like to. Davey Zoutenbayer in 7th place. He did really strongly last time around at Paul Ricard last season, last year for that matter. He had a really good event that day, and I'm excited to see what Davey can do again. Of course, for those that are unaware, Davey Zoutenbayer, the Dutchman, he got 2nd place last season. It's his first podium within ACC Race Nation. He hasn't had one since. Admittedly, he hasn't done many races since, so it'd be unfair to speculate on that. But for Davey, right in the thick of the action, and also the only Nissan in the field. Not the only Japanese car, admittedly. The other Japanese car driver is Jordan Hardin, number 16. Definitively not Japanese, I must admit. Jordan from, well, effectively South England is what I'm going to call it, but that technically he would disagree with. There's Ben Spiro, there's Simon Whiting, there's John Wells. Those are the last drivers within 2 seconds of pole position currently. And just having a look at the drivers' standings from last week, just to make you aware, a reminder, the top 3 runners from last week all have success ballast to carry. So Dan Hatton, who won last week, he'll be carrying 30 kilos. That's a good effort from him in the Mustang. Second, you've got Simon Whiting, so he's struggling in the McLaren in 15th at the moment. He's got 20 kilos of ballast to carry along with him. And Stuart Packham, who's had his duo of 3rd places, a brace of those, he's currently 2nd on a time of 1 minute 54.3 as Dan Hatton decides to go back to the top. Great effort. Oh, Ballasaldin, slide. He's got to keep hold of it, but that'll be that lap time ruined. So, Ballasaldin won't be improving. Frustratingly, I can't get to the drivers I would like to for these last few moments. But right now, Matt Phillips has come across the line. He's 18th. Simon Whiting's in the pits. We've got John Wells in the 69 machine, running a slightly different livery to what I'm used to seeing. He's there in 16th place. Liam Watkinson's just coming around the final corner. Then it'll be Steve Hall as well, and then we'll have John Wells as the next driver. Lots of Wellington going on right there. But John just rounding this final corner now. Liam Watkinson pretty much right in front of us at the minute. And there we go. We can actually get our cameras back now. We've finally been able to do that. We can actually get that for the last part of the qualifying session, but unfortunately, we've got John Wells coming across the line. He stays in 16th place. Just having a look to see, is that Mikey coming towards the start finish? It is. That's an improvement from Mikey. Just a second off the back of Joe Warner in the Lamborghini. And I'm waiting to see that Stuart Packham, the last of the drivers, although he's not going to improve his lap time if he's sliding over the curb like that at turn number 10. He's still carrying on with his lap. He's not the only one who has stopped their flying effort either. There is another car out there. It looks to be Joe Warner, I think, is the car that's out there at the moment. But Packham's going to come to the start finish, and he then goes into the pits, so there is no improvement. Dan Hatton, 2 pole positions in a row. What a brilliant performance that is from the number 55. Dan, I have to admit, is really seemingly gelling with that Mustang. He looked quick last season in the McLaren that he drove, but this season it seems to be the Mustang is really gelling to his strengths. So he takes a second pole position. Ballasaldin is second. That's his best qualifying of the year so far. Stuart Packham and Hartle Toby are on row number 2. Jeffrey Van Buren, it's a pleasure to see him back in the top 5 in the Ferrari with Mark Laszlo alongside him in 6th place. Then you've got Davey Zoutenbayer and Steve Hall on row number 4 with Michael van der Waal and Howard Dunn inside the top 10. Danny Zoutenbayer in the big Mercedes is the last driver within a second of pole, and then it's Jordan Harding on row number 6. He's got Dennis Penders and Bence Biro right behind him. Simon Whiting and John Wells are on row number 8 with Danny Felix and Matt Phillips on row 9. Liam Watkinson and Joe Warner round out the top 20 with Mikey Keating and Rover Rakatamanga on row number 11. Taking up the Cadillac positions, if you want a Formula 1 reference to throw in there. Well, we are just a few moments away from getting started here for the evening. I'm just going to give myself a quick breather, and then we'll be straight into the action. So less than 60 seconds to go here for the third round of the championship at Le Castellet. We've got a packed calendar for season 12, which we're really excited to see here for the championship. We had 15 races, of course, in season number 11, which was the most that we've ever seen. We've got another bumper grid as well. Next week, the drivers will be heading off to Barcelona, and then the first of the 2-hour races in the championship will be happening at Spa on the 11th of March. There's a little break after that, and then we have another set of 5 races, and then another little break after that, and then a final set of 5, bringing us to a total of 15 rounds of the season, covering all of the corners of the continents here on planet Earth, ranging from, of course, America right the way through to Africa and everywhere else in between. What a time to be alive here, ACC Race Nation. So we are about to get underway for the formation lap, and there they go, the drivers starting off now. And we've got Dan Hatton leading the way for the second time this season. And it came as a bit of a surprise for Dan to be on provisional pole last week. His race performance evidenced that he's got the ability now to take a victory despite immense pressure. He's in the right car, to be fair to him this evening. Paul Ricard very well suited to the Mustang's strengths. So we'll wait and see if he can make fuller usage of that. Obviously, Barcelona next week will be a little bit more challenging, I feel, for the Mustang, but I've been proven wrong before. But if we go through the drivers' standings just whilst we are watching the drivers circulate on track, as I go through the replay once again, because for whatever reason we can't, of course we can't actually return to the garage to view everything. We've got Will Fielden on 59 points, leading the championship. Unfortunately, Will not here participating this evening, so he's going to relinquish that lead. Stuart Packham is second in the drivers' standings on 56. He's also third on the grid. Hartle Toby is on 51 points with Mark Chapman on 50. It doesn't look as if Mark Chapman is racing this evening, so he's going to drop down the order. Jordan Harding is 5th on 47 after his miraculous 4th place finish last week at Brands Hatch. Michael van der Waal is 6th on 46 points, tied with Ballas Zorden as well, who you can just see in the BMW there in the foreground. Then it's Simon Whiting, who is on 45 points. Bence Biro is 9th on 43, tied with Dennis Penders, who's on the same score. If you're wondering about Dan Hatton, where he is in the driver's standings, he is 14th at the moment. His first race of the season was last week. So Dan, if he were to get another result, would be firmly inside the top 10 for season 12 after 3 rounds. If he can convert another pole position into a race victory, he knows already how Stuart Packham operates. He knows how Hartle Toby operates. He's fought both of them quite a bit last season. Ballas Zorden is arguably the unknown here, really. He's only done 2 races with ACC Race Nation, but is already seemingly getting to grips with this M4 GT3 that he's driving, and seems to be on top form. The 666 moniker not giving him any bad misfortune at the moment. But we are coming up to the final few corners, just approaching the middle sector effectively, and in the race circuit, just going around the left-hander at turn 10. And can Dan Hatton get a good launch off the line, consolidate first place as everybody else starts to filter into position? What can Jeffrey Van Buren do now that he's back in the Ferrari that he is so comfortable with? The McLaren experiment didn't work. It was a tough breakup between himself and the team, but Ferrari welcomed him back with open arms. And will we see a resurgence in form from him? Can Steve Hall, another narrative here, just get through a race without having an accident? That's going to be key for him. And what about Rover Rakatamanga? From the back of the grid, he'll be starting 21st technically, because Mikey is in the pit lane. But what can Rover do? In front of the home crowd, can the Frenchman pull off a surprise? We are about to go racing for an hour here at Paul Ricard. And the race is live here from Le Castellet, and that looks like a good strong start from the pole sitter as everybody starts to filter the way towards turn one. Dan Hatton leads. We'll get onto the cameras now. Ballas Orden's looking to defend from Stuart Packham into turn one. They lean on one another through the corner. Packham's going to be on the outside. I don't think he's going to find a way through there. There's Mark Laszlo just about gathering it all together. He's going to lose a spot to Davies Outenbuyer and Steve Hall if he's not careful. There's Michael van der Waal in 9th place. We're watching everybody filter through. There's a bit of an accident in the background, and that looks like it's between Liam Watkinson and Joe Warner as Steve Hall goes off the road and drops down behind Danny Zoutenbuyer. Simon Whiting making some moves as the timing tower starts to update, and that's an accident for Howard Dunn, and it looked like one of the Ferraris. I'm going to say that was Steve Hall. Again, getting caught up in nonsense. It just doesn't seem to be his time. But what a start. Dan Hatton absolutely firing away from the cars behind. Ballas Orden is second. He fended off Packham in the end. Then it's Toby. Van Buren's got Danny's brother Davey alongside him, and Mark Laszlo all trying to go side by side towards Sainz at turn number 9. They're 3 wide going into the corner. Who's going to be brave enough? We see them all go off the road. Apart from the Ferrari, Bennis Pender's getting pushed about in the background, but Van Buren can't find a way through, and Mark Laszlo just about keeps the two behind. But Van Buren really not giving this one up. Wow, great action between everybody there. Davies Outenbuyer lunges it up the inside at turn 10, and he goes through. That was really good racecraft from the Nissan. He moves up a spot into what is actually going to be 6th position because the timing tower takes it from the last sector time. So Davies Outenbuyer then is in 6th position currently, and there's Van Buren having a little look and a nibble at the inside of the final corner at turn 13. But great start for Hatton. That's exactly what he would have wished for. Let's get some other camera angles into play. There's Orden, there's Packham. Then it's Toby. Laszlo's got Zoutenbuyer alongside him again. He's down the inside. Van Buren watching with interest. He might try and fire this up the inside if Zoutenbuyer doesn't keep this covered, but he does. The Nissan retains 6th position for now. Van der Waal is there. Then it's Danny Zoutenbuyer. Then it's Dennis Penders. I think Jordan Harding was caught up in that incident actually as well at the start of the race that we saw Howard Dunn going the wrong way. So that's unfortunate for Jordan. He's all the way down in 21st place. Some are way away from the pack too. Oh, that's Van der Waal getting very, very out of shape out of the corner leading on to the Mistral straight there at turn 7. Looking to see just a little bit further up. Are there any movers and shakers at the moment? Davey does have a very fast Nissan. I have to say that car's looking very quick in these early stages. He's closing that slipstream up to Laszlo, but I don't think he's going to be close enough to the number 8 McLaren, and sure enough he isn't. So Laszlo for now retaining that position. Let's hope Mark can continue that on as the race goes ahead. There's Van Buren, Van der Waal, Zoutenbuyer right behind the Belgian actually. Dan Hatton leading the way. There's Van der Waal. We can get on board with him. We can see that we've got a looming Mercedes in front of our TV screens right now from whatever you're watching it from. Ooh, little snap of oversteer for Penders in the background, but Danny looking to get on with this already. That's a nice line actually out of the final corner from the Mercedes. He's in the slipstream towards turn 1. And will he move to the inside line? He's looking, he's going to go for it to the inside. Goes the Mercedes. He's going to brake a little bit later, and there isn't really much Van der Waal can do. The Mercedes moves through, and Jordan Harding is off the road. And unfortunately for Jordan, this race, it started off well. It just doesn't seem to be going in the right direction. Zoutenbuyer running very deep there into the opening couple of corners. But the Mercedes, in theory, should be faster than the Ferrari. He shouldn't have to worry too much about any challenges from the cars behind unless he gets a poor exit. We'll watch on board now with Van der Waal. And look like he's going to be close enough to make an attack. Zoutenbuyer though moving the car around a little bit. You see as the cars go through the gears. They're starting to close a little bit more of the slipstream. And the Mercedes were pushing out some grunt in that V8 engine. You can see the Ferrari up to 179, 180 miles an hour. And Zaltenbach is going to have to go defensive into Sainz. But there's no way through around the outside there. He's done very well though, Van der Waal. He can't find a way past. So he's going to have to wait. But Zaltenbach, that's too deep. He can't come back in because the number 71 puts the car in the right place. And a mistake from Danny opens the door. But the the Dutchman was trying to go around the outside at turn 10. That would have been exceptional. Now, Dennis Penders, the Belgian, right there with him. And Steve Hall in the mix. Yeah, I was just saying, oh, Van der Waal's gone on the curb. He's going to go round. He just about gathers it all together. And can Dennis Penders find a way through on the inside at turn 3? No, Danny's out by cuts the door and cuts his nose right off. The Belgian will not find a way through there. So, but I've got to say, Danny's struggling a little bit here with rotation on the Mercedes. Steve Hall has a little wobble there. Out of turn 6, that was fortunate he caught that altogether. Just have a look at the back of Dennis Penders' car. Looks like he's had a bit of damage. We're watching this fight. This is a really good fight at the moment. And Penders is going to have the slipstream, and he's more than close enough to make a move at Sainz. I'm assuming Zaltenbach, is he going to go defensive? Yes, there he goes. There's the defensive shape. Oh, Penders is going to try and go for it on the inside part of the circuit. That is incredibly cheeky from the Belgian, but he's going to put himself into 8th place. And can Zaltenbach find a way past? I don't think he can go back through. And sure enough, he can't. And I think he's going to go too wide again. He's going to go off the road. And Steve Hall moves up into 9th place. So that Mercedes looks quite quick, but also seemingly is a little bit more volatile than what Danny was hoping for. And that fight has actually made this pack a lot bigger. We weren't talking about a quartet, but Danny Felix is there, as is Bence Biro. I haven't talked about Danny Felix. The first time we've seen him in a while, actually, in ACC Race Nation. But the lime green McLaren is right in the thick of the action. So good start for Danny. Really good to see him back in the action. Jeffrey Van Buren as well. He's now following and tracking Davies out and by a full 6th position. Mark Laszlo's established a bit of a gap between himself and these two. And as I was saying, Bence Biro just at the back of this group. So this sextet of cars all squabbling over what is effectively a place inside the top 7. So we wait for the timing towers to flip through. There's Howard Dunn. He was impacted by that accident earlier, as was Simon Whiting behind him. But they're now latching onto the group in front of them, and that's good. That could be a lovely move from Simon if he can pull it off. Not quite. The McLaren is going to have to wait. We've seen the McLaren being a very quick car around here, but is sometimes limited by its top speed. And we know that the AMR V8 very strong, and I think Simon arguably has got a little bit of damage. So hanging on to Howard Dunn would be quite a good element for him. But Dan Hatton leads the way. Ballasorden second. Hartle Toby's third. Behind, rather, is a second and a third. I was going to say behind Stuart Packham. So Hartle Toby's fourth. Mark Laszlo's in 5th. Seemingly, oh, Toby, nearly losing the back end on the exit of turn 10. I'm just wondering with Toby, we saw this at round 1 at Monza. We saw it again at Brands Hatch. Is the R8 one of those cars that is very fast, but you have to dance on the limit to get the best out of it? And I wonder if it's just causing Hartle Toby. He was so consistent in the Mustang last season. I wonder if the shift in balance for the R8 now is going to cause a few issues for him. That's something to think about for the German driver. And right now, Toby is leading a pack of cars. Dennis Penders, what has happened to him? He was involved in a big fight earlier. He's actually just pulled away, so Danny Zoutenbayer gets back in front of Steve Hull. This is really where the action is at the moment. You know, we are looking at a group of cars with Penders kind of pulling away from Zoutenbayer now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cars all in shot. We are right now looking at a septet, all fighting for a couple of places inside the top 10. Penders has checked out. Now can Danny Zoutenbayer get himself sorted and back into the groove? And Mark Laszlo is starting to say hello to the rear spoiler of that R8. So the number 8 behind the R8. The fight of the octaves at the moment, really. There's Davy Zoutenbayer and there's Jeffrey Van Buren as well. So those are a small quartet going on. I say small, it's relatively speaking compared to this set of cars, as Danny just lights up the rear tyres on the exit of turn 10. We're going to see that. Oh, there's been an accident. That's Bent Spiro's fencing the wrong way. We had Howard Dunn involved again. Just seemingly getting caught up in the end of that, and that looks like quite significant damage for the AMR V8. It's allowed Matt Phillips to come through. A Canadian having a really strong opening quarter of the race so far. I'm just wondering if anybody's going to go into the pits. Yeah, Bent Spiro's got significant damage. Steve Hull's back in the pits. Just can't get through at the moment, Steve, without any form of problem. He's picked up the Ross Harris of luck in this season. He seems all to be falling on the turquoise shoulders of his car. He's in the pits getting that fixed. It isn't necessarily the worst time to come in for a pit stop. I mean, ideally he'd want to go in a bit later, but he could, in theory, still make it to the end of the race. But we'll have to wait and see now whether he can pull that off. Ballas Sorden currently with the fastest lap of the race in second position. Just in a bit of a status quo with Dan Hatton at the front, and then you've got this group of cars all together. Van Buren looking close to the back of Zoutenbayer. Penders has now got a little bit of a gap to, well, what was a little bit of a gap to Danny Zoutenbayer, but that group's now split off. So Michael van der Waal is in 10th place. Danny Felix is up to 11th. Oh, Danny Zoutenbayer's gone round. Unbelievable. You very rarely see a car go off on its own at signs, but I can only presume that Danny just went on the curb and it completely unsettled the big Merc, and the yellow, red and black car tumbles down the order. So that puts Michael van der Waal in 9th place. And it puts Danny Felix in the top 10. What a return to ACC Race Nation this is. He'll be delighted with that. Simon Whiting's 11th, with Zoutenbayer just behind him. And then it'll be Matt Phillips, who again is moving up through the table. John Wells is 14th. Joe Warner's in 15th. Doing a really good job, Joe, actually. Quietly going about his business, but we won't talk about it. Mikey's up to 16th place from the back of the grid, well, from the pit lane, actually. And then Liam Watkinson is 17th, the last of the drivers who have pitted. And Jordan Harding is, I'm just trying to see, he's there on circuit. He's about to get lapped by the seams of it from Dan Hatton. It's unfortunate for Jordan, who had a really good race last week, but I suppose he would probably, in his own words, say he got quite fortunate at Brands. Maybe this is his nadir today. But he is quite some length behind a challenge. It'll be a challenge for him to get into the top 20, admittedly. Not impossible of Jordan's capabilities, but he's going to be in it for the long haul if he wants to get some good points out of this event tonight. Let's get on circuit and have a look at some onboard views. So Howard Dunn's been into the pits. I'm going to assume that's just cosmetic damage now on the AMR V8. Ballasorden is being dropped a little bit from Dan Hatton, but he's not exactly struggling with Packham behind him. The Lamborghini not close enough. In fact, Howard Dunn's gone back as a pit, so maybe he didn't actually get the damage fixed, sadly. Davies out and Bayer in 7th. We just scrolled through the cars. Danny Felix, wow, that's absolutely delight to see him inside the top 10. I'm just trying to think if Danny Felix has ever had a top 10 finish within ACC Race Nation. From the top of my head, I would say that's not the case. I remember him having a really good fight at the final corner of Mazzano a few seasons ago, and that was with Jeffrey. It wasn't actually with Jeffrey, it was with, off the top of my head, I can remember this, I know I can, that would be Jacob Byford-Rue, who he fought with at the time. So to see him in the mix is really good. I think his best result I remember from last season, before he was unable to do any more events, was 12th. And my apologies to Danny, actually. My complete apologies. He had a 5th place finish back in season 10 at the final round of the championship. My apologies to Dan, but it's been some time. It has been some time since we last saw him in the top 10. So, good effort so far. And I do remember now that fight he had with Byford-Rue at Mazzano. It was for 10th. It was for 9th place, and he got overtaken at the final corner, so he was 10th in the end. So he's had 2 top 10s. Right now he's on for a 3rd. That's really great to see. So let's see if the lime green McLaren can keep it up. Laszlo still doing a good job. Really elements of status quo in this group at the moment. You know, Toby's got himself back into a bit of a rhythm again. He's a little bit further away from this group. Van Buren's close, but not close enough really to put the number 8 McLaren under too much pressure. And Matt Phillips is doing a great job. Danny Zoutenbay's gone round again at signs. Disaster. But let's ride on board with Matt. The Canadian fighting over what would be a best finish of the season if he is where he is right now in 13th. But we're just watching him as he comes through turn number 10. Little kick of oversteer. Scored 14th at Brands last week. And he's acquitting himself quite nicely into the championship. But being with John is really good to see. John, a seasoned veteran, of course, of the championship and being the director as well. He knows his history within the series. But Matt Phillips, a newcomer in relative speaking terms, he'll do well to keep on to the back of John if he can. And if he can't, it's not a disaster. He's still doing a solid job, but we'll cut away from him. Simon Whiting clearly struggling with damage. And in fact, I'm just going to show you the difference. So, Danny Felix admittedly has got a toe from in front of us, so this will exaggerate the gap a bit more. In fact, I'm just looking to see if there's another McLaren on the main straight, because that would have been a bit unfair. No, evidently not. So we'll scroll our way right the way back through to Dan. So there we go, up to 175, 6, 7, 8, 9, perhaps even 180 miles an hour. We now compare this to Simon, who's doing 169, clearly carrying front damage really. That McLaren should be doing 175 I've seen in practice. So he's running wounded at the moment, is Simon, but despite the incidents he's been involved in, he is still there doing a solid job. And watch out for him later when he's got his damage fixed at the pit stops. He might come alive in that number 19. Whilst he's losing a bit of time at the moment, it will come back to him due to his natural pace. But this is the closest fight on circuit at the moment between Danny Felix and Michael van der Wal, on board with the 985. And through the gears, very brave on the brakes, a lot later than van der Wal in front of us. He's closing the gap with Slipstream. He just has to work out his moment to try and strike at the car in front of him. And the Dutchman has to work out the time of how to keep him behind him. But that exit out of the corner was fantastic, and that's propelled him far enough away from the McLaren not to have to think about him again until the next part of the lap. 7 tenths is too much for Felix to try and overcome down the Mistral straight. Of course, if we had the afterburners or even a form of DRS, if you want to call it that, or an extra set of horsepower boost, then maybe he could. But right now, he's limited to about 176, 77, 78 miles an hour before he hits the brakes at signs into the right-hander. A little bit of a wobble from Van der Waal mid-corner. Down through the gears, and went into second for turn 9. Everyone takes a slightly different line into turn 10. Some people prefer a narrower, as Felix gets a little bit sideways. But as I was saying, a lot of drivers prefer one of two strategies really with turn 10. They either take a wide line and then cut back in, or they take a tighter line and then lose a little bit of time on the exit. So you could be slow in, fast out, or fast in and slow out. But seemingly both strategies, realistically, they are quite similar in terms of exit speed. So we'll see that variance. And Van der Waal on that lap actually putting a really good shift there in the Ferrari. So is he able to rebuff the efforts of Felix, who both of whom are pulling away from Simon Whiting, if we just saw briefly in the background. Mark Laszlo's now got himself back onto the spoiler of Hartle-Toby, and I have to say they are both doing a really good job. These set of cars here from second to fourth, they are all in the mix here for second to fifth, are all in the mix for a race victory. Not just Dan Hatton, they aren't too far away, but Laszlo in particular, he's kind of got the benefit of everybody here because he's in fifth place. He can decide to pit before everybody else if he wants to, and that would be a big advantage. The undercut round here would certainly propel him past Hartle-Toby if he decided he wanted to take that opportunity. We are starting, of course, to get into pit stop territory as Laszlo really closes the gap under the R8 in front of him. Through the right-hander, into the left at the penultimate corner. Oh, the 208 over the curbs. Oh, Hartle-Toby was very defensive mid-corner, almost caught Laszlo off guard. But that works out in the end for the pair of them. They're so similarly matched, actually. Zorden and Packham by a tenth of a second, and then Toby and Laszlo 2 to 3 tenths slower on that lap. But I think this is more now a fight over, these two have to decide, do they want to fight one another, or do they accept if they work together they can close the gap up to the leading drivers in front of them. That is something that they won't be able to communicate with each other because of course they're not in the same team, but they do have to think about that, because at the moment they are not far away from the podium position, which would be both of their first podiums of the season. Of course, Hartle-Toby's had a few podiums in the past and a couple of race wins. Laszlo has never had a podium. And ACC, whoa, where is Toby going there? That was a peculiar line, almost wanting to take the chicane there from the R8. Oh, it was wide again at signs, and Laszlo sniffs an opportunity. But at the moment, not yet presenting itself. But there was a little bit of a... I don't know if he just lost concentration for a moment there, Toby. I wonder if he thought not to worry too much about the straight, but the car drifted away from him. As we go into the last corner, Well, and Toby going into the pit, so I wonder if he has decided his tyres a little bit too all over the shop. Maybe the pressures are starting to adjust in a way that he doesn't want them. Ooh, that's close between Phillips and Laszlo. That pit lane exit where it feeds out is not ideal, I have to say. It's the one thing I'd argue about this circuit being so safe. The pit lane comes out on the racing line. But Laszlo now has a clear path to Zorden and Packham in front of him. So let's see how the McLaren does in some clear air. It's got Jordan Harden in front of him, but Jordan won't hold him up. He's a lap down. Jordan will just continue on. Simon Whiting's still operating in 9th place. He's inside the top 10 from John Wells. Danny Zoutenbayer's in the pits. Rover Rakatamanga's up to 15th place. He's having a great run is the Frenchman. But he is 10 seconds or so behind Mikey, 9 seconds or so behind Mikey Keaton, who is the lead Lamborghini at the moment. Joe Warner's made a pit stop. Let's cut back to the garage just so we can get an update on everything. So Danny Felix came in on that lap. Mikey is still circulating in the Huracan. Jordan, for whatever reason, has been classified as not having pitted yet. We did see him in the pit, so I wonder if he had a technical problem, because he was off the road at turn 9 before. That's a peculiar place to have gone off. So Dan still leads the way. There's Ballas Zorden. He carries on. Packham carries on, as does Laszlo. What does Van Buren do? He carries on. And then Davies Zoutenbayer carries on as well. So the top 6 all together. No change there. Dennis Penders has just been doing what Dennis Penders does. He's running his normal races he will do always in the Ferrari. It's his consistency that's always the most impressive from him. I always highlight Dennis because, again, he's one of those drivers who just typically cracks on with it. He doesn't do silly things usually. I'll try not to commentators curse anybody today, but Dennis running in 7th, having not yet stopped. Van der Waal is 8th, Whiting is 9th, and then John Wells is inside the top 10. So the top 10 all yet to pit. Hartle Toby now has a fresh set of boots on in the other R8 in the field, so let's see how he gets on. Whether he did pit for another set of tyres, we don't have access to that information, unfortunately. But he will have got new fuel in, and he will have clean air, and he won't have to worry about anybody behind him. And Hartle typically does run well on his own. He is one of those drivers who can just put the mileage in, put the laps in, not have to worry about drivers around. He can do time trial race laps. See how that pays off. Danny Felix has re-emerged from the pits in 13th, just in front of Rover Rakatamanga. So the Frenchman's recovery drive from the last row of the grid is now up to 14th. Zoutenbayer got out in front of Phillips. Is that Steve Hall off the road? What's happened to Steve? He is just trundling towards the barrier, and in it goes. And I wonder if Steve has got some form of technical issue. And if that is the case, my goodness me, this man cannot catch a break. You see the car's kind of wobbling towards the corner. He's coming towards the penultimate corner. He's got no one around him. It won't be a problem, but he can't even turn. And I just wonder if the wheel has gone. And yeah, he's nosed right into the wall. I hope he doesn't nose back onto the track. He should be okay. Everyone else has got through. Ballas Zorden in the pits. That's important. That is critical for this race. He was in the fight for the lead. Steve Hall's not moving. I wonder if that is that for him. Now, where's Hartle Toby in relative motion with Zorden? Not close enough.
We're halfway through
As we move past the halfway mark, Ballas Zorden is comfortably in front of Hartle-Toby. It looks like he's extended that advantage. So the M4, I don't think, is my theory, that he's not pitted for a new fresh set of tyres. I think he's carried on. That's my theory. We shall see if that is the case. But Zorden carries on from Hartle-Toby. We'll get a time gap in just a moment. We're just waiting to see if the gap comes through. So 5.2 seconds, and Dan Hatton responds. So the race leader comes into the pits, as does Mark Laszlo. Packham carries on, as does Van Buren. So that is the current fight for the front. Let's not forget Davies Outenbayer as well. He will decide to carry on too. He's not far away from the group. He's doing something slightly different in the GTR. So Hatton's in the pits. And we now wait and see where these two front runners come out in relation to him. A couple of people having some issues in the race. So Howard Dunn was a bit disappointed with what went on there. Bence Biro as well, another one. I did say he had some issues. And where is Hatton? Well, he's coming down pit lane now. And Zorden's coming around the final corner. Hatton's still got a bit of a way to go before he gets to the end and up to speed. He should emerge in front of Zorden. It's going to be very close. Here we go. The Mustang fires itself up to speed. Zorden will be able to see him, but he won't quite be close enough. That is tight. Let's see if we can get on board with Zorden. This is what we want to see. Might not be able to get Zorden, but we can get on board with Dan Hatton, and that gap has come down. So the undercut, in the end, Le Castellet was worth about 2 seconds, and visibly you can see Zorden is exceptionally close, but not quite close enough to attack the Mustang just yet. But that'll get Hatton thinking about what his next strategy is. So Hatton carries on. The top four now, the only drivers to have pitted in that, not yet to have pitted in that lead fight. Mikey Keating is carrying on. It's good to see him inside the top 10. And Packham pits. So Stuart Packham pits. Van Buren carries on, as does Zoutenbayer. And John Wells is not close enough to the start finish line yet to determine where he's going. But Packham pulls into the pits. He's going to come into his pit box now, and he stops on his mark. So the Barwell Motorsport team will be on that car, sorting as many issues out as possible. And Hatton has been able to respond to the drivers behind. So Hatton now coming to the penultimate corner, waiting to see what's happening with Steve Hall. It looks like he has retired, but we're just trying to find out what exactly was the problem. So there's Packham's coming out of the pit lane now. This is going to be close, but Hatton's going to get him, and I think Zorden's going to get him. Up to speed they go. The M4 breezes on by, and Zorden retains second place. Well, that is massive for this race. Zorden has just about retained second place virtually on circuit there. Of course, we've still got the front three yet to make a pit stop, but that means Dan Hatton retains his lead. Ballas Zorden is second, Packham is third. Now in theory it should be Hartle-Toby fourth and Mark Laszlo in fifth place, who's just off the back of this group. Now Van Buren and Zoutenbayer have carried on. Now if they don't pit this lap, there's going to be a noticeable difference between themselves and the leaders, and there you go, Van Buren carries on and Zoutenbayer carries on as well. Now I wonder if these two have decided to try and run for as long as they possibly can and see how the tyres go before making a decision on whether to pit or not. I wonder if that's what they're debating. Rakatamanga's in 11th place, so his earlier pit stop has paid off, but he will be ruining that later on in the race because of the way the tyre wear is in this game. Did pit very early, as Mikey Keating is just coming out of his pit box, but Mikey, I think, is going to go behind Ben Spiro, perhaps behind Liam Watkinson. It's going to be very close. No, behind him and behind Joe Warner. So Mikey will be fighting those two over what is effectively 80th place. It's very close between these two, actually. Having a big old fight, these two. Packham has found himself, though, on the back of Ballas Zorden here. Let's get out on track. Now, of course, Zorden has a little bit of traffic between himself and the race leader. Now, Zorden has decided he's going to pick up the slipstream of Mikey Keating in front of us. It seems that Mikey's Huracan does have quite a bit of straight line speed to it. You can see the Lambo behind us of Packham is really closing that gap down to the M4. That Lamborghini is looking especially quick in a straight line. He's not quite close enough. But he runs wide at signs, and that's all. Oh, Mikey's gone off the road, but that's all the sign you needed from Packham to go through and slip into a net second place. And Hartle Toby now is right there as well. Did Mikey smash into the wall? No. That would have been impressive if he had. But thankfully for Mikey, he's avoided the wall, and Hartle Toby's gone round. Just as I was about to cut to him and say, what pressure is this man going to put on net third position, Hartle Toby spins it out of turn 10. And that has frustratingly been the story of the season for Toby, is that he's exceptionally quick, but he just is struggling for whatever reason with a measure of consistency in that R8, and sadly he drops down the field. John Wells in pit lane now. So it's Packham behind one of the back markers there of Joe Warner in the Mercedes, who will probably move out of the way, or Packham will just overtake him, which is a little bit easier into turn 3. So Ballas Zorden now has to find a way past, and he doesn't get held up too badly there, so he goes on through. Now, Van Buren is still out there on circuit. Yet to pit. It's the first time this season we've seen him at the sharp end. And I wonder if he really is trying to figure out what to do with the tyres. There he goes, into the pits. Got to be careful, Van Buren. I wonder if he clipped the pit lane there. That was very tight. I didn't quite see it. So Davies Altenbayer takes the lead of the race here at Le Castellet, the only driver not to have pitted in the race apart from Jordan Harding, but we'll look over that one. Dan Hatton will lead the race. He's got 6 seconds to shoot Packham. Dan went really well through the traffic there. He's managed to skip over all of that lot, and it's extended his advantage at the front. So Packham's second, Zorden's third. I'm interested to know where Van Buren comes out in relation to these guys. Mark Laszlo is 4th. He's doing a great job. And then it's Toby inside the top 5. Van Buren now getting up to speed. Dan Hatton is gone. Looking like a second win in a row. Packham there in second. Zorden is third. I'm looking to see, will Laszlo get in front of the Ferrari? Yes, is the answer. He does. Hartle Toby, though. Oh, it's going to be close on the brakes. The Audi has to dive to the inside at turn 1. It's going to be tight together, but the R8 should be through. Van Buren on cold tyres can't get that car fired up to speed straight away, and the German gets back in front of the Ferrari. But that will now circulate the group around, and we'll get our true positions without the back markers interfere. Well, I say that, but we still have them in the middle, so we will still get some interference there. Davies out by is still going. I wonder if he's just going to try and do a splash and dash at the end. That is what I'm thinking. He's going to come into the pits. He proves me wrong. Hits his marks nicely. Into the pits he goes. So the last of the leading contenders makes a pit stop. Danny Felix is running in 9th place. He's got Rover behind him in 10th, and Pender's 11th, and Simon Whiting's there in 12th. So Simon Whiting was quite a long way behind this group earlier on. I did say keep an eye out for him, the number 19. He isn't that far away from getting into the top 10. We've got a drive-through penalty for track limits that has just pinged up on our screens. That's for Bence Biro. That's a nightmare for the Hungarian. So he's going to have to serve a drive-through. Now coming round the final corner, Dan Hatton is in the lead. And I'm just waiting to see where Davies Altenbayer is. He's trundling down the pit lane now. If we cut to the external shot, he's still in the pit lane. So Davey is going to fall to 7th place, I think. He is now out of the pit lane and up to speed. So the Nissan, if he has put a new set of tyres on, then he will have the freshest set of everybody in these last few minutes. There he is in the background. Don't forget the Dutchman finished 2nd last season here at Paul Ricard. Was in contention for the race win for quite a fair chunk of it. Something about this circuit he seems to just gel quite well with. But now we've got our true order after the pit stops. That's what we were after. So Dan Hatton leads, and he's now 8 seconds up the road from Stuart Packham, who's 2nd. Packham's done well to pull away from Zorden in the end. He's in 3rd position. Mark Laszlo is 4th. Hartle-Toby is 5th, with Van Buren not too far behind in 6th. Davies out by is 7th. Michael van der Waal is 8th. Then Danny Felix has got this trio of cars behind him of Rakatabanga, Penders and Whiting. Danny's out by is 13th after his spins at Signs. John Wells is 14th. Matt Phillips is in 15th position and on his own now, but doing a really good job. Liam Watkins has just been lapped. He's 16th. Joe Warner is 17th. Bence Biro has come out just in front of Mikey Keating after his drive-through. And then Howard Dunn is 20th after some issues during the course of the race. Jordan Harden is still circulating in 21st. And the only retirement of the race, sadly, was Steve Hall. He had his pedals disconnect again. Just cannot catch a break. Can the number 5 and the season 8 champion. Must feel, sadly, like quite a lifetime ago for him since he last won the championship. But hopefully his luck will turn in the next few events. I'm going to cut back a little bit. So Van Buren's there with Toby right now. They've got Laszlo in front as well. We ride on board with the rapidly quick R8. Toby clips over the curb at turn number 7. I'm curious to know what his top speed is actually in the R8, because it's not a car that we've seen much of in ACC. Through the gears, up through the kilometres per hour, 175 miles an hour, 176 maybe, just about. So R8 perhaps a mile an hour or two down on the race rivals that it has as competitors, but isn't harming him in the slightest. That's wide, that from Van Buren behind us. Just having a look in the little mirror that we had available there. But looking very strong in the final sector of the circuit. The 208. Ooh, getting very close on the braking. To Laszlo in front of us, down through into first gear. The R8 does have a really nice rotation in the final sector. It's going to slam down through the gears into turn one, looking very confident now. He's got the bit between his teeth. Not quite yet finding a way through. Should go onto the driver's eye camera. Look into the inside. Just filling the mirrors is Toby, but he's got to be careful. He's got to attack and defend. He's got Van Buren behind him, and he'll pounce on an opportunity, will the Dutchman. But this is a good line. That's what Toby was after in the slipstream. Might have caught the McLaren a bit too early, you know. Because this is now going to be a drag race towards Sainz. And I will say this much, that Jeffrey Van Buren's going to get a double toe from these guys. It's not quite close enough to take advantage of it. But I think Toby, yeah, I said it before. I think Toby got alongside Laszlo too early. He's going to try and go around the outside as the German. He's going to run wide at Sainz, and that's going to cost him quite a bit of time. Where is Van Buren in all of this? As Toby continues to try and keep it on the outside line, here comes the Dutchman. You can see his red proximity marker. And the Audi, oh, he loses control, regathers it all together. Now Van Buren's going to look to the outside line. They make contact at turn 10. And Toby keeps the position. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other for me, that one, to be honest with you. I think Toby just had a little slide and Van Buren was on the outside line. Nothing really gained from that. And Jordan Harding has now made a pit stop, so officially that has gone through. Oh, wow. I think people didn't realise then that Jordan was emerging from the pit lane. I said earlier that the pit lane here is really quite dangerous, to be honest, the way it feeds back onto the racing line. And Hartle Toby could have had a huge accident rear-ending the back of the NSX that's just emerged from 21st place. But Toby will have another attack again. Riding on the dashboard cam. See where the Ferrari is. Bent Biro has cleared his stop and go penalty. Van Buren is closer to the Audi than the Audi is to the McLaren. You can see that gap is not changing too much at the moment. And you can be quite fortunate, Toby, because the Ferrari isn't close enough to attempt to move into Sainz. Laszlo doing a good job at the minute, putting up a good fight over 4th place. There is also the ongoing squabble between Penders, Rakatamanga and Whiting. That car was a quartet, it's now a trio. But everyone's progress sort of being stymied by what Penders is doing really at the moment. So that lot all fighting together. Here's Toby again. Is Laszlo going defensive? No. Well, I'll be honest with you. As Toby throws it down the inside at turn 1, I have to say, that might have been a bit of a double move from Laszlo there, and he's covering really defensively. But Toby's got the traction off the corner. He's got the run he needs. Can he go through at turn 3? Watch out for Van Buren if he'll try and follow through. He's looking, but Toby makes it. into 4th place. He's got to be careful. He doesn't want to make a mistake now after fighting so hard to get in front of Laszlo, who has a little snap of oversteer on the exit of 6, and that might just put him in the clutches of Van Buren behind. 2/10 those two are separated from one another as they go on to the Mistral Straight. But does the McLaren have a good enough top end to pull the gap back? He does. But the Ferrari is alongside him, but that is very clever from Laszlo to use the slipstream to just bring himself back up in front of Van Buren. So, good bit of racecraft from the McLaren, but he runs a touch wide at Sainz. On board with the rear spoiler is the best place to be watching this action. There's Davy Zoutenbayer in the background. I said watch out for him as well with his new tyres. He is rocketed up to this group. Oh, that is wide. That's too wide for Van Buren. Is this a chance for the Dutchman to go through? We're having to look really far back now. But the Nissan, I think he's through, and he is. So Davy Zoutenbayer is up to 6th position. And the McLaren is going to try and do his best now to try and re-attack the Audi that we ride on board with, which has the best seat in the house right now in this race. I think Jordan was very pleased to just be involved in this fight, to be fair. He's having a nice little battle with the front runners. So now what does Davy do? The top 3 look as if there's no action going on between them at the moment. Rakatamanga's still trying to find a way past Penders to get inside further the top 10. But in truth, I think that 9th place will be the limit of what he can achieve today. But from 22nd on the grid, I don't think he's done a bad job. As Rover. Bent Biro, he's had a bit of a nightmare today. He's been hit a few times. He's not too pleased about it. And look at this. Davy Zoutenbayer's going for it. He's going to have a bit more slipstream from Hartle Toby, but he's going to have to go the long way round here at Sainz. Into turn 9 they go. Both of them give each other loads of racing room, and Jeffrey Van Buren's going to say thank you very much. I'm down the inside. He slips through into 6th place. Can he go round Laszlo at turn 9? That would have been unbelievable if he'd have done that. He's going to go a bit too wide, and Davy Zoutenbayer is going to strike back at turn 10. They're going to... Oh no, Van Buren's just lost the back end. No contact between the two, and Zoutenbayer is actually very canny there. He managed to avoid a spinning Ferrari. And despite all of that, they remain in the status quo, despite having a few swap positions in the matter of meters. That's great. Great car control from Van Buren to keep hold of that. I think if he'd have been in the McLaren, that probably wouldn't have happened, and he'd be facing the wrong way. Ballasorden, 3rd place, good position to be. Davy Zoutenbayer wants it to be 4th place. He's got 6 minutes to try and pull it off. That Nissan, and that gamble actually, to just decide to pit loads later than everyone else and new tyres, has really paid off. Into 1st gear, gets the car nice and tight. Just seems to have a bit more grip available to him at the minute. He's got a nice run out of 7. And here we go. He's going to go defensive as Laszlo. He's going to swerve a couple of times. And then Davy's going to pick his moment to go. There he is now. And if he's got a distant toe from Toby, he's going to have to hope he can access it. Little bit of contact down the main straight. Zoutenbayer's pushing for the middle road. They're both not leaning and giving up. Zoutenbayer to the outside. Around Sainz! That is a move and a half. Zoutenbayer queued that one up. He bumped door handles down the straight to make sure he got the position he wanted, swung out wide and then come back in. Really brave stuff from the number 18 Nissan. He's up to 5th, and now Hartle Toby's the one he's after. 5 minutes to go. Definitely looking like the fastest driver in this group. Can he get up to him and get past the R8 driver? Be his best result since his podium finish last season. Absolutely flying at the minute is Davey. Great job. You look at Davey's results so far this season. He was 8th last week at Brands. He had a really good drive that day. But this is him really firing on all cylinders, and he's got the gap down to under a second. And Laszlo now has to reassess the battle, because look at Van Buren. Van Buren all over the back of him. We have to cut to the rear wing. Laszlo's still in front. Now that could be a move. That could be a really nice move into turn 6. He's queued it up already. He's going to be on the outside for turn 7. Van Buren gives him a lot of racing room. I have to say, a lot of respect shown there between the two. And now it's a drag race towards Sainz. Jordan Harding's there. He's not going to get involved in this. He's just going to get annoyed that he has to wait for everyone. And the Ferrari moves in front. But I almost want to say that was a little bit tactical from Laszlo there. Laszlo can't find a way through, and that Ferrari has the advantage in the straights compared to the McLaren. Laszlo seems very strong in the corners. Down through the gears they go. But Van Buren has got into the top 6. Be his best result of the season. Speaking of best results of the season, Hartle Toby currently in 3rd place in the drivers' standings, on course to make that 2nd at the moment, regardless of whether he finishes 4th or 5th. But he has a Herculean task in front of him to keep Zoutenbayer behind. I'm looking at his lap time here. I think this is going to be a new personal best from the Nissan, and it is. It's a 54.7, 6/10 faster than the Audi. Absolutely flying at the minute is Davey. Into the left-hander at 1, over the curbs at 2. And the approach for 3 is critical, because what he has to do now is he has to set the car up ready to attack him down the Mistral straight. Banging down the gears he goes. 3rd gear for the right-hander at 3. Then it's 2nd for turn 4. Hartle Toby's offline a little bit. It's all about not being too overzealous with the throttle. And he's got a really good line. That's nice. That's really nice. And Zoutenbayer setting it up for the left-hander at 7. Now he's just got to get the line right, which he does. Use the slipstream, and he should have the grunt in that Nissan to get through. Alongside he goes. Now it's a run towards Sainz. But I have to say, the R8 putting up a good fight here in a straight line. Toby moves to the right-hand side of the road a lot more. Zoutenbayer is going to try his overtake around the outside again. He's got half a car length in front of the German. Into the right-hander they go. Zoutenbayer is going to keep it there, but I think he ran a bit too wide. And yep, Toby regains 4th place. But this is the biggest fight. Oh no, that's a drive-through for track limits for Mark Laszlo. Oh, what a shame. What a shame. As Zoutenbayer... Oh, Toby got that wrong. That was... I don't know how they've not made contact there, but I've got to say, Toby... I think he just ran too deep, but inadvertently managed to be a really brilliant defensive manoeuvre. Dan Hatton's on the final lap of the race. And where's Mark Laszlo going to finish? Because that's going to pelt him down the order. Although looking at it, his drive-through, he is quite far ahead of Michael van der Waal and the rest of the gang. Less than a minute to go in this one. Everyone else... I mean, this is still one of the closest fights on circuit, with Penders still holding up Rakatamanga and Whiting. They just can't find a way through. Laszlo trundling down the pit lane at 30 odd miles an hour. Drive through again. Oh, and it's for Danny Felix this time on the final lap. Toby's having to go exceptionally defensive. Here we go. It's Davey versus Hartle for 4th place. Now, I would argue that before, Davey caught him a little bit too early. He's got to use that slipstream. He's very, very close behind. He's got Danny Felix in front, and Toby swerving a few times. He can't do it more than that now. Final lap kicks onto the screen. To the outside line we go with Hartle-Toby's car on the inside. They both knock on each other's door mirrors. They were both going to try and fight over the middle ground. They're going to do it again. Toby doesn't want to let this one go. He wants that line into Sainz. They lean on one another through the right-hander. Can Zoutenbayer go round the outside at turn 9? I'm conscious of where they are on circuit and where Dan Hatton is. I'm just going to very briefly cut to Dan Hatton, who takes a second win in a row. What a drive from Dan Hatton. Packham and Zorden are going to be second and third. A little bit of a wobble for the Audi, but he's going to stay in front. Well done to Packham. He's going to finish in second place. Zoutenbayer's got one last corner to try and make a lunge. He's not going to do it there. Toby covers the inside line. Can he get underneath? He's not quite close enough. Ballas Zorden, take a bow. It's your first podium in ACC Race Nation. Davey didn't quite make it in the end. Hartle-Toby, great defensive drive to hold on to 4th place. Van Buren is 6th. And then we cut back. Mark Laszlo's actually managed to, incredibly, only lose a spot to Michael van der Waal, who's had another quietly consistent race, has the Dutchman. He's done a really good job. And Michael van der Waal is going to come home in 7th place in front of the absolute scrap of a fight from Laszlo. Penders. Is that Whiting getting past Rakatamanga at the line? I think it is. It is by a 900th of a second. Oh, Rakatamanga will be annoyed at that one. Zoutenbayer's 12th. John Wells will be 13th in the end. Danny Felix, he'll have the penalty. Mikey Keaton, 15th. Good result for Mikey. He can put his central heating on tonight. Liam Watkinson, 16th. There's Joe Warner. And Howard Dunn will be the last driver in this much race-affected, battle-affected race. But let's go through the standings. Dan Hatton, 2 wins in a row. Whisper it, ladies and gentlemen. Is he acquitting himself so well in that Mustang that he might be able to put a championship challenge together? Who knows? Who knows if that's the case, but he'll be really confident after that one. It's second place to Stuart Packham. He'll be pleased with that result. Third goes the way of Ballas Zorden for his first podium in ACC Race Nation. Hartle-Toby in 4th after a great fight with Davy Zoutenbayer, sorry Davey, in 5th place there. Jeffrey Van Buren is 6th with Michael van der Waal, a very solid 7th in the end. Mark Laszlo, after having his drive-through, only ended up losing a place in the end, so it didn't work out too badly for him. He finishes in the same number as his car. Dennis Penders did well to fight off Simon Whiting and Rover Rakatamanga, who just got overtaken and ends up outside the top 10 at his home circuit. Simon 10th, Rover 11th. Danny Zoutenbayer, formerly known as Davey, is 12th, with John Wells in 13th. Good drive from John today. Matt Phillips, another good result from him this season. Had a really good time out there. He was 14th. Danny Felix in 15th. He was in a fight for the top 10, but it seemed to come away from him in the end. Mikey Keaton in 16th, with Liam Watkinson 17th. Joe Warner 18th. Howard Dunn 19th. Ben Spiro is 20th. We had Jordan Harding having damage and some issues in the race. Alongside that was Steve Hall being the only retirement of the race this evening. Shame that for Steve. He's really peeved off about it, but hopefully he'll be able to get that fixed, ready for round 4. And of course, round 4, the drivers will be heading off to the wonderful world, if you don't know already, the wonderful world of Spain at Barcelona. But thank you very much for watching, everybody. There's been a few of you tonight, which is really good to see. If you've got anything you'd like to know about, do come and have a look at us on Discord of ACC Race Nation. But from me, Jack Millington, your commentator as always for Season 12, thank you very much for watching, and wherever you might be in the big wide world, have a good one, and we'll see you next week.